Now people are looking at it more maturely around, okay, actually we can sign maybe a 2 or 3 year agreements. So we're not doing 5 or 10 years. Our capex is less, if not zero. Our OPEX obviously goes up, but that's better for the CFO to be able to manage. And with business plans changing from probably people only know really at most, I'd say 3 to 5 years in terms of what they're forecasting going forward. It helps them plan and align their real estate to their business strategy as well.
Greetings. Welcome to How's Biz podcast, the NAI Global podcast featuring commercial real estate news from around the world. Today's guests are James Horrocks. He's an MRICS and Senior Director with NAI UK, and Alex Cooper, who's Director of Flexible Workspace with NAI UK. Both guys are in London. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks, Gary. Good to be on.
Yes.
Nice to have you here. Alex Cooper is a new recruit for you, and we want to talk about why you hired him, basically to run your new business, which is called Core Working, your flexible working platform. But before we really talk about Core Working, James, you and Matt have been, Matt Walsh, of course, have been very involved in the NAI Global platform with a lot of referrals since you joined us about 2-3 years ago now. Maybe you could just brief us on some of the recent activity, I mean last 12 months. What kind of businesses have you've been helping with some referrals to some of our different NAI markets, and what was the nature of some of those transactions, if you would?
Well, no. Firstly, thanks, Gary. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember how long ago it was we last spoke, but it's been certainly over a year or so, and things have progressed nicely despite what I would say the economic sort of headwinds, particularly here in the UK with our mini budget, and obviously now got an election coming up as well, as has you guys over there in the US. But as the corporate services sort of arm has developed and matured, we've had some sort of relatively good success stories, and the principles and the strategy behind it and the drivers behind expanding the way we wanted to sort of starting to pay off. So I'd say in summary, we've got about plus minus sort of 2 million square foot under management, whether exclusive or non-exclusive, and that's predominantly obviously for transaction management work. So that's where we're point of contact with the clients and obviously delivering transactions in other jurisdictions, obviously as well within the UK through our co-rep team. We've had some transactions, I'd say, in pretty much every sort of continent or geographical location, really, in the Americas, APAC, and EMEA region, which has been great. And I'd say majority of those with the NAI partners, some not due to lack of coverage, what have you, but generally we were able to use and take advantage of the NAI sort of footprint globally to be able to kind of best serve our clients, which is great, and the whole sort of reason for joining the NAI sort of global network as well. For example, we're kicking off something in Brazil actually later on this afternoon. Speaking to our colleagues out there, Lucas, on that specifically. I'd say that one of the big kind of key developments from our side as well is the continued expansion on our expertise in life sciences, which is more at the moment predominantly UK focused, but we are looking at the expansion there as well. And I know Matt is particularly driving that and looking over in the US and see where there's some synergies with clients and stuff. And then finally, just to touch on our sort of project management arm as well, which continues to grow, and building surveying team as well. So they've historically doing office fit outs. They're now doing more office fit outs, but also industrial work, and then also professional advice around things like dilapidations as well, which is be a unknown thing for the particularly American listeners, but it's basically like around real estate, which is quite onerous here in the UK. So generally, since we last spoke, it's going in the right direction, which is great. We hope and think it will continue to grow as we want.
Excellent. Well, for listeners that aren't as familiar with what James is saying, NEI UK is always specialized in occupier services, or as we say in the US, tenant rep. That's why they have such a large portfolio of clients with property under management. And when we say property under management, or when James says it, it means they're managing all of their real estate, i.e. corporate services work, not necessarily property management per se, but wherever they need real estate, James and Matt and team manage that work. And then the other part, fit outs, of course, build outs or tenant improvements. You guys have a specific group that manages fit outs and build outs, right? And so you function like a general contractor might in the US, where you're hiring all the different outfits that come in to get space ready for occupancy, correct?
Correct, yeah. So here in the UK in particular, it is shifting a bit, which we'll get into later, but the traditional lease acquisition, the landlord delivers the space in typically what we call Cat A condition, which is suspended ceilings, raised floors, but then you've then got to do your fit out yourself, essentially, and you get free rent by way of as an incentive to do that. So our rent-free incentive packages are usually very generous compared to, say, other locations, but you have to own and kind of manage that fit-out process. Hence, the project management arm in our market is a lot bigger.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, that's good to get, again, a full picture of what your core services are. But now the news, you have a new working platform, and you have Alex Cooper on board. Just hired Alex. That was the news a month ago. And the new group is called Core Working, not to be confused with co-working, but you get the concept, listeners. Core, co, similar. So, in the UK, again, they use the word flex space a lot to differentiate US, where flex is often a combo office industrial property. Flex here in the UK is, and really Europe for that matter, is a matter of short-term leasing, as we would know WeWork, which is its own story coming out of bankruptcy now. So with that said, Alex, welcome. Why don't you tell us where you were and how what you were doing before was a good fit to come over, join the fellows at NEI UK and launch Core Working.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. And yeah, it's been a month and a half in already. It's been brilliant. I was previously at the Instant Group. I was leading a team of serviced office brokers there, working primarily with UK headquartered, medium to large sized clients, often with international serviced office, flex office portfolios. And yeah, really sort of why I've joined CoRep here. It's a mixture of company culture and opportunity, really. Meeting with Sim and James and Matt, just credible, well-respected tenant rep experts, and I had a feeling really that I could add some value with my experience of building teams of service office specific specialisms and procurement projects, and given the market and the trajectory of it, the global exposure with NAI, a real lure for sort of how we can grow exponentially. Yeah, to put it in perspective, in the UK, we're really spoiled with serviced office spaces, with 2,000 plus serviced offices across the country, and over half of those in London alone, where serviced office makes up 8% of occupancy. And we're seeing key international cities following suits, with landlords recognizing and appreciating the appeal of having serviced office providers in their buildings to attract occupiers. So yeah, the timing seemed perfect.
Well, and you just mentioned a year ago, I was in London before you were with us, Alex. We did a tour of some flex space that you guys were working with managing, and it really struck me as a American how prevalent flex space is. As you just said, it's 8% of the occupier market, which is really remarkable. I don't know what it is in the US or worldwide for that matter, but I can't imagine it's even 1%. But it's very minuscule comparatively, which really leads to a bit of a question. Why does this kind of space appeal to UK-based companies and others internationally? Again, this is a common office use in Europe, less so again than in America. But why is it so appealing? Are they shorter term leases? Flex meaning, there's more flexibility. But why is there such great appeal in the UK versus other places? What do you think?
I think generally the serviced office market has evolved immensely. Clearly post pandemic lockdown requirements of businesses in the UK, London in particular, to have maximum flexibility and appeal for bringing staff back in has been really, really important. It was on the rise well before that anyway, but it's really sort of reignited the return to office from a corporate occupier perspective of how service is viewed more favorably in line with leased and service space, rather than sort of the inferior keep the costs down and stay in a dark room because you're not a proper business. It's certainly not perceived that way if it once was. In London, there's a fancy serviced office provider popping up on every corner, and they're competing for premium space and competing for occupiers who want to attract new employees and their current employees into the office with some fantastic co-working spaces and collaborative areas. So it's the supply and demand is high in London for sure, and that's being rolled out across the country.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Again, I'm comparing with the States a lot because I know this market better than you guys, and vice versa. In the States, the big word is amenities. You're using services. In the States, we talk about the movement, and there always is in all the cycles. For Jay Olshansky, our president CEO, I think he said it's his 6th cycle. It's something like 5 for me. But whenever we have these downward cycles, even briefly, there's a quote flight to quality, and tenants and corporations move into Class A space. But what are some distinctions between services? Because that implies more than just coffee, as espresso makers, and loungy kind of meeting spaces, and just a nicer ambiance, better natural light, all those things. But when you really talk about services, there's a people component to it that maybe I'm missing. So maybe touch on an item or two that I'm not thinking of.
Before Alex kind of really answers that, Gary, just to kind of take a step back on the original question around why UK compared to maybe some of the other markets in particular. And I think one of the capital and flexibility are two things you hear the C-suite always say. We don't have to spend money on something that's just going to sit there. Yes, it's serving a purpose, but if we don't have to spend money on it, we don't want to. We'd rather see OPEX rather than having to spend on CapEx. And in some businesses may be different, but most tend to be that way focused. In the UK in particular, with dilapidations, which I mentioned earlier, there's quite a big cost around that sort of initial capital outlay up front, and then also at the back end as well. So as a solution for occupiers to kind of avoid some of that, and also historically leases in London 10, 20 years, that's obviously coming down. But equally, if you want good prime space and a traditional lease, you will be probably looking at a 10-year lease, maybe a 5. So again, that sort of flexibility has kind of driven this, I'd say, ecosystem, for better words, that's matured and done very well, particularly in London. And also you've got the mass of people as well, because it's obviously a very large market compared to, say, some other European markets. As it relates to the services, I think what you're seeing as well is there's a real maturity. Again, going back to Alex's point around, serviced offices was historically seen as almost the last resort if you've run out of time on your current lease and you didn't have anywhere to go, or you had a project that you knew was just going to be for a year, so you're just going to stick a team over there for that period of time and almost forget about them for a degree. It was a last minute solution that people would look at. Now people are looking at more maturely around, okay, actually we can sign maybe 2 or 3 year agreements, so we're not doing 5 or 10 years. Our capex is less, if not zero. Our OPEX obviously goes up, but that's better for the CFO to be able to manage. And with business plans changing from probably people only know really at most, I'd say 3 to 5 years in terms of what they're forecasting going forward. It helps them plan and align their real estate to their business strategy as well.
That's very helpful. Thank you, James. So now let's go back to co-working, core working, the business itself. How's it structured with you guys? Is this just not, I shouldn't say just, but it's a new branded entity that Alex is spearheading to really differentiate you from your company from other service providers in that space, so to speak. In addition, are you actually master plan or master lessee of multiple floors, or are you simply just helping companies find the right core working space and you're the advisor in that process?
Correct, the latter, Gary. So very much this is focused on the segment of the market looking at the flex space, initially around the, probably what we say more the smaller requirements in terms of that churn and the brokerage. But with that intel and information and experience and expertise, Alex also brings a knowledge of the flex market. We see that as a good supplement to the advisory work for occupiers. So the key aim is providing our occupiers, our clients, the full kind of plethora of different options that may be available. So whereas some clients may come in and say, right, we think we need 5,000 square feet traditional lease office space, we go, right, okay, we can obviously look at that for you, but then have you thought about these other delivery options as well and what that cost profile looks like? So yes, your OPEX may be cheaper on that first one, but you've got CapEx and other things to consider, timelines and all that sort of stuff. Whereas the other solutions may be more attractive for them for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, got it. And is there a reluctance sometimes? Is there kind of you deal with a company that maybe occupied traditional office space and now they're looking at flex space? Is there some extra hand holding at the front end?
Some clients will have a much more educated view on serviced offices if you've used them, and outside of WeWork, for example, which is WeWork and Regis are more commonly known serviced office providers, but they make up less than 9% of the UK serviced office market. So there's so many providers that have. And WeWork, to their credit, have come in and changed the game and put serviced office on the map. So clients might be familiar with being able to bring your dog to the office and play ping pong and drink beer in the offices whilst working, but that's not necessarily what the other serviced office providers are doing. So some assumptions are sometimes made, but as I say, clients that occupy various flex offices globally will have seen a variety, the good, bad, and the ugly, and therefore they'll know that there is optionality in some of these cities, and they will then have relatively understandably high expectations of what they want from the space, being able to bespoke certain layouts and have certain amenities that and meeting room packages and such. So sometimes when a client is not so familiar with serviced offices, they can often be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I think from a corporate perspective is the operational kind of risk that has always been a bit of by that I mean things like IT infrastructure, things like confidentiality. A lot of complaints with people in suites next to another one, they can hear the neighboring tenant in terms of what they're talking about. So for a bank or someone who's dealing with obviously very sensitive information, they can't have that, that situation. So, but that's now being sort of treated or dealt with by a lot of these operators in terms of their sophistication and build up now. So again, going back to the St Mary's Axe example, that's a very good solution in terms of you're getting corporate occupiers going in there and actually comfortable being in there operationally, and their IT teams, their risk and security teams kind of all sign it off. So there's usually that initial hurdle of, okay, flex office, that just means I just get a suite and 4 or 5 desks. They can't make it to how they want it, and there's some operational sort of challenges around it. So there is usually that sort of initial education. but once they go around and see them and actually understand how they do now operate, it's a far different conversation. And interesting, and we'll go on to this. They see the benefits of them in terms of getting the younger workforce back into the office and getting that collaboration going again.
Excellent. Well, since you mentioned it, what is, if you have an idea, not to put you on the spot, but what is occupancy back to, again, in the States? And I wrote about this in one of our podcasts 6 or 8 months ago about the different occupancy levels of big markets. US, the bigger cities are struggling to get to 50% and keep it. Where are you with London? And then for that matter, are we talking about 5 days in the office, or is it a hybrid 3, 4, and 5?
It's definitely hybrid, and hybrid being probably 3 days with 2 days working from home sort of concept. I'd say in terms of our occupancy levels, we're slightly above the Americas in terms of the UK and Europe, which shocked me a bit in terms of some of the surveys I've seen. I thought we'd be higher than the Americas by quite some distance, but we're not. I think we're sort of mid-50s or just close to 60% perhaps. But there's still the challenge of that return to office. The hybrid, as I say, is here to stay, and people appreciate that.
Does the hybrid work trend work in favor of this flex service office space trend?
It does. If you're in a serviced office communal lounge on a Wednesday lunchtime, it's absolutely mobbed. If you're there on a Friday afternoon or perhaps a Monday morning, there's a lot more vacant space. So it does cause a little bit of a headache for the providers, because they have to abide by the maximum that they can have on a floor in an office. And equally, then companies are looking at which individuals are using the space. If their particular office is already full, then there's some good technology solutions that can help them manage that in advance. But yes, the serviced office environment does lend itself well to that hybrid working of the fluidity of, if there's more people than expected, then they can spill out into communal areas, use phone booths, use bookable meeting rooms or breakout areas, as well as the designated office.
Yeah, well, we are clearly in this evolution, if you will, and I don't know if we're in year 5 or 6, but something like that when it got on the radar. So it'll be interesting to talk to you guys in a couple, 3 years. We'll have other stories, but a few more questions for today is, can you share some behind the scenes stories about the launch of core working? In other words, for James, you and Sim and Matt would get together, maybe someone else, and talk about business strategy of growing Core Rep, which is your original main company, as well as NEI UK. Were you seeing this? Well, you obviously saw the trend. You mentioned it earlier, this move toward flex or service space. And then independently, Alex, you were doing your thing with another company. You were seeing inside, because you were in it all the time, what was going on in the space. And you thought, gosh, it looks good, it's working good, but we can do it better, but I need a different platform. So in other words, what was the background behind you guys coming together to do this new enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. So, we're obviously looking here all the time in terms of how we best serve our clients, where their growth opportunities, and how we position to take advantage of that accordingly, Gary. And I think the serviced office flex office market is one of those. If you're advising a occupier client in this market, and I would say of any size now, you're almost negligent not to consider flex as either the solution, as a solution, or forming part of a solution for that particular client within the office sector, obviously. So there are various kind of reports and thoughts around how big the market will get to. And obviously Alex referenced the sort of 8% for the London market. I personally believe that will continue to grow, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing sort of 10+% of the total proportion of office space going to flex. And as you see landlords re-engaging with either operators in a different way through management agreements to help amenitize and activate either old tired buildings, or to kind of set them apart from the newer quality stock if it's a new building. We just see this growth happening, and continue to grow, and occupiers will follow.
In the UK, it's typically real estate advisors will specialize in one or the other, traditional leasing or serviced office brokerage. So I think the combining of the forces is really quite powerful. Being able to agnostically assess serviced office solutions alongside traditional lease solutions. There's nuances between the two for sure. As mentioned, the serviced office market moves so quickly. So a challenge in ensuring that we're obtaining live, current, accurate pricing and availability information for our clients at the touch of a button, and that could change in 24 hours. So it's different in many ways to what can be a longer process and a more thorough, dare I say, but comprehensive nonetheless. In serviced office, we can cover anything and everything under one roof.
Interesting how sort of the pandemic was a change maker to the office market, the way e-commerce was to retail sales. James mentioned and forecasted that it's not long before 10%, double digits of your occupiers will be in serviced space or flex, whereas 10% was a big barrier when e-commerce sales achieved that level of store sales from traditional retail shopping. So here we are. Really, finally, where do you see this market in 3 or 5 years, for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that in the last 3 to 5 years, we've had a fairly turbulent time with lockdowns and wars and recessions. So hopefully the next 3 to 5 will be a little bit less turbulent. But I think that those things have accelerated change and accelerated demand for flexible office space, for flexibility, because the 10-year lease is a thing of the past, really. Most businesses are not looking at a 6 to 12 month stopgap either. They're looking at a 2 to 3 year realistic business plan to involve suitable office space, and that suitable office space needs to fit their needs for attracting and retaining talent and having people use the office appropriately, and that's where that really attentive office provider will win. And I think it's the premium space in premium locations.
As I say, I think that the concept of the flight to quality will carry on. I think this is being seen certainly in our market and other markets that we operate in as well. We've seen the good quality buildings, vacancies actually dropping in those good quality buildings, and vacancy ticking up in the poor quality locations.
Sounds like you're onto something good here. Well, we'd have to do another show. It'd be interesting to do the perspective from the owners, investors, and the capital markets on how this is changing the office sector entirely. But like I said, that's another show. Well, this is Gary Marsh. I've been speaking with James Horrocks and Alex Cooper from NEI UK. This is our How's Biz podcast with NEI Global. Thanks, guys, for participating, and thanks, listeners, for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to How's Biz, presented by NAI Global. Review, share, subscribe, and keep an eye out for the next episode.